Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of Podiatry Marketing. With me, as always, my trusty co-host, Big Jim Mack. How you doing today, Jim?
Tyson, doing well, feeling bigger than ever. Get back in the gym today, get my lift on, go out for some runs. I think life is good here in Montreal. I've got no complaints.
Do you weights or anything like that? Or you just run?
I do some weights now. I'm getting to that mid 40s when your T or testosterone starts to dip, and it makes sense to. I don't want to be old and weak. I've got to get into the gym a little bit. Not that I'm lifting mega weights, but I definitely do a little bit of lifting.
Old and weak. I got a rotator cuff problem at the moment.
It's not fun.
Oh, just bugging me. Yeah, there's certain things that it just limits you doing certain things. And the worst part about it, I can't remember what I did. It's just all of a sudden I heard it.
Life.
Oh, yeah, I know you'll get out of bed one morning, you go, "Oh, why is my calf hurting? Oh, my lower back." So it's just, yeah, fun and games. So, other than all our medical issues, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to talk about why podiatrists can't live off Google alone. I think it's been a pretty good 10 or 15-year run where things like Google Ads, Google Search, Google Business Profile, it used to be called Google My Business. A lot of these things have worked really well for a long time, and a lot of podiatry clinics and a lot of other marketers put all of their eggs into the Google basket. But like everything else in life, things change, and it may be worth for people to evaluate their current kind of marketing stack. What are they doing? How diverse is their marketing? Because maybe in 3 to 5 years, maybe Google's no longer the king. And if you've only been doing Google things,
Oh, excuse me. So shit. Apologize for that.
no worries. I'll just pick that up in the middle. If you've
Yeah.
always been doing Google related things, you may find yourself falling behind. So today is just talking about a little bit why Google is where it's at and then ways to diversify your marketing stack.
It's actually quite refreshing to hear this because like you said, the last 10 or 15 years, everything has been Google. If you're not on Google, if you're not using Google, then you're falling behind. Or old school marketing is dead. You've got to be doing Google ads. And now you're saying that, well, you explained that Google is now even having its run. Things are starting to change.
Yeah, definitely things are changing. For a while there was a kind of big push towards kind of voice search, these
Yeah.
kind of audio assistants, whether it be Amazon, obviously Google had their own as well, Siri from Apple. There's a lot of people concerned that people are going to no longer be typing things into text boxes. They're going to be speaking it out loud. So there was a time when that seemed like that was the thing that was really going to be moving the needle when it comes to marketing or the way that people find information. Searching, "Hey Siri, who's the podiatrist near me?" or my foot hurts. What clinic should I go to? And speaking it out loud. But we've noticed a little bit that some of the stuff has fallen off. The Amazon Echo is not something that's really that popular these days. People still like to type on their smartphones and into Google on their desktops and laptops. So that's fallen away. But the thing that's starting to take over now, and you probably hear it a lot in the mainstream media these days, is ChatGPT,
Yeah.
AI, and even some different Google competitors have started baking in some of these features into their web browser, into their search engine. For example, Bing, it has a very tight relationship, as Microsoft has a tight relationship with the makers of ChatGPT, which is a company called OpenAI, and it's baked into that search engine. But it's a time of wonder what's going to happen next. Google has their own AI that they'll probably try to work into their own search, but things are changing a little bit. So it's a good time for people to realize that the way people find the way that people are looking for podiatry services or looking for someone to go see in a clinic, that might be adapting and changing. So clinics have to be on their toes as far as what worked 5 or 10 years ago is not working now. Maybe it's working now a little bit, but you have to be ready to make some changes down the road.
Yeah, it's amazing because even when I wrote the world's greatest podiatry book, It's No Secret There's Money in Podiatry. When I wrote that, and that was 9 years ago, I make a comment in there about Google, that at the moment, Google is the king of search and all that. But I said, who's to say in the next 10 years that everyone's going, Google who? 9 years, we still know who Google is. But I think it's interesting how these other changes are coming about. And I do recall not too long ago where they were really pushing that voice was going to be the way people search. That's all they would do is just talk to their phone or their device that was on their desktop and that would do all the searching for them. But it just didn't really take off. Why do you think that? Why do you think that did not take off?
I think we're out in public and it's easier just to type things into text box. I'm sometimes at home by myself,
I
but
can
even
imagine you,
then,
Jim, going, "Hey Siri, why is this itchy?" And you're in the middle of puppy. So yeah, that makes sense.
I think that's part of it, but also just I think there was also some concerns about whether it be Google or Amazon, were they only limiting the time when you activated the device to listening? I think there's some people concerned that I've had this happen to myself, even with my iPhone. If I have the Facebook app on my phone, am I for sure that app is not running in the background? So I think there's some concerns with people that some privacy aspects of
Yeah,
things, but it's also just habits. I think a lot of us are just really used to text input when we're searching for things, and to speak it out into the air felt odd, even though I guess people are pretty willing to have AirPods on and walk down the street. You think someone's talking to themselves, but they have AirPods on. But I think it is that it's a habit thing, but I think also texting something or doing it on your phone just feels a little bit more of a privacy situation there.
yeah. And I have had times when I'll be a conversation with you or you're with people, and all of a sudden your watch will go off, and we'll start saying, "Oh, can you please repeat that? I didn't hear what you said." And go, "I wasn't talking to you in the first place." Or it'll just start saying and then it'll start randomly talking to you, and you go, "No, I wasn't asking you any questions. This was just a personal conversation." Your devices are sitting there in the background listening to what you're saying. Plus, there's all these people in rooms that are listening in as well.
Yeah, living in Quebec, there was a point in time when I enjoyed kind of being around French people or hearing the French language because I didn't have to pay attention to it because I didn't understand it, right? But
Yeah.
the longer I've lived here, the more I understand things now. So
And
it
you
really
realize I'm
probably,
talking about you.
yeah, exactly. But that being said, I get this podcast isn't really about just slamming Google. I think it is something that's worked really well for a lot of clinics, and it works for the clinics I work with right now very well because Google is this kind of magical thing that takes people's like problems or they need some type of information and usually matches it very well with a result in the search results. I think it is what's going to disrupt Google is going to have to be pretty great because it is a very compelling service and it's something that has really added a lot of value to be able to find answers to almost
Yeah.
a lot of different questions. So today's not really necessarily about it's horrible, it's going away, but it is important to consider some diversification because if you become over reliant on Google, right? Like,
Yeah, I was going to say
um,
that. Are there risks involved? Because I know not just podiatry, but I know other businesses, when I ask them, "Oh, what's your marketing strategy? What's your plan?" And they go, "Oh,
yeah.
we just put everything into Google Ads. That everything is, that's all they do."
The thing is, yeah, you're definitely at their mercy at times, right? There's these things that it won't sometimes make sense, but maybe one week you're ranking number one for podiatrists in your local area, and then they have a change to the algorithm, and then which basically means the way that they rank the results that come onto the page. Maybe they decide they don't like your website. They have these crawlers that go onto your website and see something, and they think that maybe you're trying too hard to rank for something, and it's not an authentic or your web page or your website isn't as authoritative as somebody else. So
Yeah.
they rank higher, but it's at their whim to change this algorithm whenever they choose to. And it can have pretty catastrophic results for not, I haven't seen it happen a lot with clinics. I've seen some traffic drop off due to algorithm changes, but there's certain, I would say people that are on the fringes, right? Maybe you hired a marketing agency that does what we call black hat tactics, trying to do everything you can to get to be number one. And it's not always a legitimate page or they're doing things a little bit on the sly that Google doesn't like. So there's some of these changes in these algorithms that can really hurt websites from ranking, and that's something to be really aware of. I'm not sure if you run into that at all, Tyson, but that's a pretty common thing.
I have heard of people years ago trying to do sneaky things where they would have a black area on their web page and they'd have black text written in there. And it was just purely just Cairns or Los Angeles. And they would just stack all these words in there thinking, no one can see that they're there, but this is why we're ranking. But then Google spanked them for doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, those kind of black hat tactics, Google can, like I said, they're the bots that scrape those pages and look at those pages are much more sophisticated than they were 10 or 15 years ago. So it really is not a great idea to do those things. Sometimes desperate marketing agencies or people that just really want to prove amazing results as fast as possible will sometimes lower themselves to do those types of things.
So are you saying that sometimes they can do the wrong thing and can get you ranked high really early on. But then when the bots come through and they look at it and they go, nah, then they push you straight back down. Do you get punished long term for that? If your website was continually producing pages that ranking high and then they're going, nah, that's rubbish. Do they eventually just go, you're not going to be ranking high no matter what you do?
Yeah, there's definitely different ways that, so we've talked about this in the past, but Google's a black box. So some people will try certain things and it'll work for a while, but definitely can lead to your domain name, right? Let's say you have your clinic domain name. That kind of reputation goes back to the domain level. So if your a website or domain name has been constantly kind of testing the limits or getting caught by Google, then it's on the naughty list from Google. And you might suffer long-term consequences for that. It's not something that just, oh, we'll change it back to something good and it'll be okay. It can have a really bad impact on your ranking on a long-term basis. Another thing that's really important to consider with the risks of kind of over-reliance on Google is that in the early days, it was easy to get traffic relatively, but now most people know about Google, and most people are really trying to be competitive, not only on the organic search or on the Google's business profile, but also the Google search ads. And what happens there is that, especially with search ads, you're competing against other local providers for terms like podiatrist near me or podiatrist with the name of your town or the name of your city. These search ads are based off of an auction mechanism, right? So if multiple people are bidding on the same search terms, there's only a certain amount of search volume that's available for those terms. And there's only certain terms that are really what we call like low funnel, right? What are those people that are typing into Google right now to find a podiatrist? There's only going to be so many of those searches per day. And if 30 clinics are bidding for those, you can get into a bidding war. So it's important to know that prices on Google ads go up over time. There's ways to be more specific. Like I said, if you're as long as you're targeting those lower kind of funnel keywords, that's one way to limit your spend. But there's some marketing providers that are willing to bid on all kinds of terms, whether it be foot pain or plantar fasciitis. When you bid on really generic terms or terms that maybe like big national brands or big manufacturers of different products would want to bid for, if you're going against the big boys and you're a small clinic and a local clinic, the return on investment for that type of marketing spend on Google is really not going to be beneficial for you. So it's important to realize that the level of competition and the way you bid on keywords in these Google ads is really important. And if people are too over-reliant on that part of Google, it can really come back to bite you.
So if a podiatry clinic is in a smaller town where there might only be half a dozen podiatrists and only one or two of them are actually using Google ads, then that isn't going to be so much of a drama. It's more if you're in New York City and there's more than 6 podiatrists and you're trying to rank number one to be podiatrists in New York City and you've got a ton of them that are all fighting for that, it could cost you an arm and a leg.
No, it could cost an arm and a leg, and it's just like this, the Goldilocks, the right balance, right? You live in a big city that has a high density of people, but then there's a lot of podiatrists and a lot of people to bid against you. You live in a small town, there's less people, less search volume. You'll pay less, but you'll have less people to draw in. So it's a bit of a balance there with that opportunity. But like I said, it's more and more people are aware of the power that it can provide. So it does get more expensive over time.
So what would you suggest podiatrists do?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to people to look at where their spend is going in their current marketing plan, right? Like maybe from a percentage level, what are you spending with Google Ads? What percentage is going to your website? What are you spending on SEO? What are you spending on a newsletter? Are you doing anything on social, whether that be paid or organic? And just really figuring out what's a long-term diversified approach you can take to make sure that you're not caught off guard. If Google is 20 or 30% of your marketing spend per month, that's probably like in a healthy range. I would say anything under 50% right now is pretty reasonable. But if you're in the 80 to 90% and everything is going through Google Ads and you're just doing Google related stuff, maybe that's time to consider what other platforms are available to increase your visibility. What is there Facebook ads? Is there some segment of the population or segment of your local community you want to get in front of? And are there ways, if you're working with if you want to work with seniors, for example, what are some of those channels you can reach out to them? Maybe they're still listening to the radio. Maybe they're still watching TV. Maybe they read newspapers still. What are some ways that you can get in front of those eyeballs? But you have to it's a risk, right? Everything in life is a risk. And what you're trying to do is not put all your eggs into the Google basket. Back off a little bit, understand what are those, maybe something's worth maybe think we joke a little bit about TikTok, right? But like maybe
Yeah.
a 10% ad buy on TikTok may be something to experiment with and see if that actually leads to people making an appointment in your clinic. There's different ways to approach these different channels and working with the marketing provider that you work with to say, hey, like, how are we making sure that AI doesn't eat Google's lunch? Or can we test out some of these channels that younger people are using? So that's what I would say initially is audit what you're currently doing, see if there's any kind of risk. Are you over allocating to one of these different channels? And if you aren't, great. But if you are, there's definitely some ways to spend on some different channels that can provide a significant amount of return on investment.
But even when you were talking before about senior citizens, older people, and I know my mum, she is 79 this year, and she's forever on YouTube. She's always got a phone there and she's watching a video on YouTube about something. Not she's right into plants and other things like that, but she is constantly on there. But she'll sit there and watch the ads first to go to the certain part of the ad. And I've heard of YouTube advertising has actually been picking up quite well over the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's the thing about these social ads, whether it be Facebook ads or YouTube ads. You can usually put it just in your local area, right? You can put a fence around, maybe it's 5 miles or 10 kilometers around where your clinic is at, and you can feed some of these different ads to people in those local areas to provide some visibility and some awareness of the care that you provide. You're probably not going to get the same kind of ROI as someone typing in specific things into Google to find the podiatrist near them. But at the same time, if you're looking to gain awareness that you exist, or that maybe you have a very specific type of treatment for a new piece of medical equipment, maybe it's Swift for warts, or maybe you're doing shockwave therapy or something like that can really benefit patients in the local area and is not something they would search into Google. Something like YouTube or Facebook ads is something that definitely can look into.
Yeah, I remember a diagram that I draw when I'm doing coaching clients. You might draw this big circle, and that big circle might represent who their ideal patients are. But within that big circle, there's a lot smaller circle, and that smaller circle is who needs you right now. So you might say your ideal patient is 40 to 45-year-old male who's active, but they may not have foot problems right now. But who does have those problems right now? And it's then also finding out the people that are aware that they actually need to see somebody. So sometimes you can have a sign up that says, do you have heel pain? And the person's going, I do have heel pain. I just thought I had to put up with it. So it's education over a period of time as well, which comes back to the content on your website and making sure the information is there. So when somebody eventually says to them, oh, you got heel pain, maybe you see a podiatrist, they go, oh, okay, heel pain podiatry, and it's in your area as well.
And I think it's just one of those things, it's like multiple touch points, right? Like maybe someone won't remember you right away, but if they see the ad 2 to 3 times, you're top of mind. And when they do have a problem or someone in their family has a problem, they recognize who you are and you become an option for their care.
Yeah, and this goes back to last week's episode when we were talking about Ned Whiskey, is once you become memorable and you stay in contact with those people, when the next person has a problem, you're top of mind as well. You will just, and that's why I think even my mum, for example, when I mentioned the YouTube ads, there's sometimes she will mention something to me and I go, Mum, I have no idea what you're talking about. And it's because whatever she's going to on YouTube on a regular basis, she's seeing the same ads keep appearing. And now all of a sudden she didn't even realize whatever that service was she needed. But because she's seen it enough, she's now talking to me about it. And I'm going, no, Mum, I don't need that. I'm younger.
No, for sure. And I think there's definitely, so how do people, once they kind of audit, what are those other channels that we talked about to jump into or explore?
Yeah.
I would say that the different platforms is starting with other search engines or other places where medical specialties are visible. So that can be Bing, like I mentioned, has incorporated some AI into their search. It's gaining some popularity these days. So obviously it's not as big as Google yet. And it's going to take a long time to be really competitive with Google, but Bing is one opportunity. It's pretty easy sometimes to actually transport over like Google ads over to Bing. They have a very similar ads platform. So that might be an opportunity. And there's also other kind of review type websites, whether it be Yelp, Health Grades, Vitals. Those are other places you definitely want to be aware of that are out there. I would say that Google's reviews is also a huge platform and is probably still the dominant one you should be focused on. If you have a 1-star over on Yelp or on Health Grades, those definitely should be addressed. But that's kind of the general platforms to be aware of. And then obviously making sure your website is up to date and really professional and really helps answer questions that patients have. When they're searching for things in your local area, you want your name and your website to be number one whenever possible, whether that be on Google, some AI bot, or Bing or something. By having an authoritative website that really explains who you are and how you help people can really be beneficial. And that's a long-term strategy. And that's something that you own. You're ranking on Google or even on Google Ads, that's something you're paying for, or you're paying for time or effort to do SEO, and you have no control of that. But you can control your website and the image you portray on your website, whether that be on the web pages you build, the blogs you do, the content marketing, the SEO on that page to make sure that it's as good as it can be and really displays your expertise so people can see that this kind of own channel that you own is really important.
And I've seen that where somebody has done some form of advertising online, might be Google, could be YouTube, whatever it was. I will click on it, it'll take me through to their website. And then when I look at the website, I'm like, oh, I'm underwhelmed by it. It's so not what I was expecting. The ad was so much better than the website. And you've gone to the website to get more information. And then when you get there, the information isn't there. You go, that was a lost opportunity. Then you go to a competitor and you buy from them.
No, for sure. It's when you don't have that kind of like when the ad doesn't match your expectations on landing page on that website, if it's a total mismatch and the trust isn't transported over, yeah, it leads to people bouncing and a waste of a click. And really the ad, you have to have that a web page and a website in place that displays that expertise so people feel, comfortable and you can build trust along that process. Another way to build trust and get to know patients is through email marketing. And like I mentioned, you own your list. We've talked about
Yeah.
this in the past. You're not renting your list from someone. You'll be able to export your list if your email marketing provider isn't doing what you want. Though you own those emails as long as you have permission from your patients. Sending out consistent emails can really be helpful for patient retention, patient activation, and really builds long-term relationships with patients, whether that be showing and displaying the care you provide, or like you talked about in the past, sometimes showing the personality of who you are and your staff is can really endear people to you. So I think email marketing is super important.
And that's
Get
on that topic too. And that's one of the things that the bigger your email database is, and we've said before that your database is gold. I know businesses that will buy other businesses purely based on the size of the database because they know everything else about the business can break or change, but the database is so valuable and it's building that over a long term and then it's maintaining it and nurturing it.
No, for sure. I think it is a slow grind. It's just one email at a time, but like you talked about, over years or decades, it can lead to a massive email list. And like I talked about, you can build trust, build these long-term relations with people. It's not only the people that are on your list, but also their network. It's their family that can really draw potential patients from. And it's a huge asset, not only to, and if you're going to sell a clinic, but if you own that list in your own clinic. The last little area I talk about is that there is definitely room for social. The organic social reach isn't great these days on really older platforms like Facebook and Instagram. You're not
Mm.
going to get too far with that, but maybe some new ones, like you talked about, joking around a little bit about TikTok or Snapchat or other places, maybe you can get a little further on the organic reach. It's not an area that a lot of people are utilizing, but maybe if you're looking for a younger population, that might be something to consider. And there's also paid advertising. So if you really want to get in front of people with a specific message or want to treat a certain diagnosis or provide a certain type of care, these paid ads can provide that. And last not least, I would say that making sure you're approaching things through a local perspective. I think it's the biggest kind of mistake I would see that a lot of clinics do these days, both podiatry clinics and other medical providers, that they don't endear themselves to the local area, or maybe there's the name of where they're located at in the very bottom of the footer on the webpage, but you really need to have pages built out to show the suburbs or the areas of the city that you treat. So you rank really well when people are searching maps or doing local searches. And the last but not least is this artificial intelligence, AI, Chat GPT. There's still a lot. These things are being built into search engines, but it's important to know that this could be pretty disruptive to this industry, whether it be taking that first step to audit what you're currently doing in your marketing, making sure you're not over-reliant on Google. You definitely want to allocate a reasonable amount to Google still. We're not at the point where it's dead and you shouldn't allocate to it, but just being prepared that over the next 3 to 5 years or even 10 years, we'll see if Google is still the dominant player when it comes to local search marketing, whether it be paid, organic, reviews. Times are changing, and it's important to really be proactive when it comes to this stuff and work with a podiatry marketing provider that is aware of these things and making sure that they're experimenting in ways to make sure you're staying ahead of the curve.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing in a lot of what you're saying is like what works today may not work tomorrow. So you've always got to be looking at your marketing strategy, planning ahead, keeping track of trends, things that are actually happening, listening to podcasts like this one, to just hear information and be aware of if nobody's thought about Google ads maybe declining and other things are on the increase, just becoming more aware of it and then start looking at what you're doing and going, okay, do I need to talk to somebody about this? Do I need to just reassess what I'm doing? But it's just being aware that, like I said, what worked now may not work next week, next year, or the year after that.
Yeah, like I talked about, Google has dominated the local search and advertising scene for such a long period of time, and because it is such an amazing product. But talked about in the past that they are a black box and they're always changing things, and they themselves might get disrupted. They disrupted the Yellow Pages, so who's to say that the second coming of the Yellow Pages is going to come eat Google's lunch? But I think it is just being aware of these things are out there and being proactive is really the two most important things: awareness and being proactive with yourself and with the marketing provider you work with.
So who do you reckon Yellow Pages beat? Just thinking back, yeah, Google crushed Yellow Pages that nobody would go to the phone book now and look up something when you've got your computer, phone, and everything in front of you. But when Yellow Pages came out, did they crush somebody else, or it was just a new idea?
Maybe,
It was putting
maybe
everything
like
in one place.
storefront signs or clinic front signs. I don't know. Like I'm trying to
Yeah,
think of walking around town, like like probably back in those days, you had a lot of town squares, smaller places, and probably it's your physical proximity to somewhere probably had a lot more of an impact on the
probably
type
word
of
of
care.
mouth, word of mouth marketing.
Yeah.
Yellow Pages, but yeah, beforehand I would say, "Hey Jim, I need a painter. Who would you recommend?" But then a book came out, so "Oh, there's a whole pile of painters in here." I go to the painting, and all of a sudden, I'm not reliant on word of mouth as much.
Yeah, definitely word of mouth. And I think the proximity thing, I think is huge though too. I think some people we used to live in a very, I would say, hyper local where you live, even with cars and things. You don't necessarily. I take it for granted now. Like when I was having some issues with my feet and ankles, I went to see a podiatrist up in the Chicago suburbs, and I felt like that was about 2.5 hours from where I grew up. And there were podiatrists 10 or 15 minutes away from me, but we decided to go see the kind of best. And I think we didn't find him in the Yellow Pages. So I think you're right. The kind of word of mouth and finding ways to generate that word of mouth is hugely important. As much as I love digital channels, these supplement word of mouth, and it can be a very powerful tool. But I think we talked about just figuring out where are you allocating your marketing funds and being proactive are the kind of two things that hopefully people will take away from today's show.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. Like you said, 10 years' time, you look back at this particular episode and you go, Jim was right. Jim knew what was happening.
Hopefully that's going to be the case. Knock on wood.
And hopefully we've bought a lot of shares, whatever came up next.
For sure.
Okay, Jim, this has been fantastic. I look forward to talking to you next week.
All right, Tyson, sounds great.
Okay, bye.